Amazon generated $716.9 billion in revenue last year. It's the most admired company in America by several rankings, the company that redefined retail, cloud computing, and logistics simultaneously. And its net margin was 10.8%. A company called Winmark Corporation, which most investors have never heard of, earned a 48% net margin on $86 million in revenue. Amazon's revenue is more than 8,300 times larger, yet Winmark's profit margin is more than 4 times higher. That gap isn't an anomaly. It is the result of a structural difference in how the two businesses are built, and it points to a category of investment that most retail investors spend almost no time thinking about. The companies generating the highest margins in the S&P 500 are almost never the companies generating the most headlines. 7 of them, specifically. My name is Phoebe, and you're watching Trading Key. The problem with Amazon and what the best businesses do differently. Amazon is a genuinely impressive company. The point here isn't that it is poorly run. The point is that the thing most investors use to evaluate a business, revenue growth, brand recognition, how often they personally use the product, is not the same as profitability. Amazon's model requires constant reinvestment. Warehouses, logistics networks, AWS data centers, Prime Video content, advertising infrastructure. Every dollar of revenue growth costs a large fraction of a dollar to achieve. That is why $716.9 billion in revenue produces approximately $77.7 billion in net income. A 10.8% margin means Amazon keeps roughly $11 of every $100 it earns. The remaining $89 goes back into the machine just to keep running. The 7 companies here are built the opposite way. Each occupies a position where the machine, once built, runs largely on its own. Revenue comes in, costs stay low, margins compound. And in several cases, competitors cannot legally or economically build a competing machine even if they wanted to. The 7 companies with margins that beat Amazon's. Starting with Verisign, ticker VRSN. If you have ever registered a .com domain, you have paid Verisign. The company operates the authoritative registry for .com and .net under a government agreement with the U.S. Department of Commerce that has been renewed continuously since 1999 and runs through 2030. Last year, it processed approximately 173.5 million domain registrations at $10.26 per domain. Operating margin was 67.7% on $1.66 billion in revenue. For comparison, Google's parent, Alphabet, operates one of the most profitable advertising businesses in the world at roughly 32% operating margin. Verisign more than doubles it. With no sales team and no product innovation cycle, the contract is the business. Second is Texas Pacific Land, ticker TPL. ExxonMobil drills oil and earns roughly a 9% net margin. TPL owns approximately 882,000 acres of Permian Basin land in West Texas and lets other companies do the drilling, the refining, and the risk-taking. When energy companies drill on TPL's land, they pay a royalty. When they run pipelines across it, they pay a lease. When they use water for fracking, they pay TPL for that too. TPL never touches the oil. Its adjusted EBITDA margin is approximately 86%. Over the past 5 years, the stock has returned 469%. Third is TransDigm, ticker TDG, which requires a brief explanation of how aircraft maintenance works. When an airline needs to replace a part on a commercial aircraft, it cannot simply buy a substitute from any supplier. The FAA requires replacement parts to come either from the original equipment manufacturer or from a supplier with specific parts manufacturer approval certification. Boeing makes the planes at roughly a 5% operating margin. TransDigm owns a large proportion of the proprietary parts that keep those planes flying, specifically the components with sole source status, where it is the only certified supplier. Its EBITDA margin is 53.9% on $8.83 billion in revenue. Airlines must buy the part. There is one approved source, and TransDigm sets the price. Fourth is FICO, which created the credit scoring model underlying approximately 90% of U.S. credit decisions. When you apply for a mortgage, a car loan, or a credit card, the lender almost certainly pulls your FICO score. Banks take credit risk, process defaults, and manage complex balance sheets at net margins of 20 to 30%. FICO takes none of that risk. It licenses its scoring model to the 3 major credit bureaus, which sell it to lenders on every inquiry, and earns a 46.5% operating margin in the process. The primary risk is VantageScore, a competing model the credit bureaus themselves created, which has been gaining traction. FICO's near monopoly is more contested than the others on this list, but it has held for decades. Fifth is Copart, ticker CPRT. Most people have never thought about what happens to a car after an insurance company declares it a total loss. CarMax buys and resells used cars at roughly a 2% net margin, carrying inventory risk on every vehicle. Copart runs a digital auction platform that connects insurance companies with salvage buyers across 11 countries, owns the land where the cars are stored, and collects a fee without touching any inventory. Net margin is 34.8% on $4.6 billion in revenue. No technology startup can easily replicate this because moving and storing hundreds of thousands of vehicles is a physical logistics challenge that cannot scale from a laptop. Sixth is Heico, ticker HEI. Airlines are among the most margin-compressed businesses in existence. Southwest and Delta operate at single-digit to low double-digit net margins. Heico sells those same airlines' FAA-approved replacement parts that are certified, legal, and cheaper than buying direct from the original manufacturer. Over 100 acquisitions since 1990 have built an operating margin of 22.7% by systematically owning portions of the supply chain that airlines cannot avoid and that competitors cannot easily certify. The demand for cost reduction in aircraft maintenance is permanent, and every flight that takes off is a Heico customer. Seventh is Winmark Corporation, ticker WINA, which returns us to the company that opened this video. Amazon built a nearly $2 trillion empire on reinvestment-heavy margins by owning the e-commerce supply chain end-to-end. Winmark built a $1.2 billion business at 48% net margins by owning none of the supply chain at all. It runs the franchise systems behind Play It Again Sports, Once Upon a Child, and 3 other resale retail brands. It collects royalties of 4% to 5% of gross sales from 1,378 franchisees across North America. It holds no inventory, owns no stores, and takes no retail risk. Total revenue was $86 million last year. Amazon's revenue was more than 8,300 times larger. Winmark's net margin was more than 4 times higher. What these 7 companies teach you about evaluating a business. One structural characteristic runs through all 7. Each sits at a position where the cost to the customer of not paying is higher than the cost of paying. Airlines cannot forego certified replacement part. Lenders cannot approve mortgages without a credit score. Every .com domain requires a registry. TPL's landowners cannot move the Permian Basin. That architecture, where you are the only viable option, is what produces margins this durable. The investment implication is that revenue growth and margin quality are not the same signal, and conflating them is one of the most common mistakes in retail portfolio construction. Amazon's revenue growing at 10% per year and Verisign's revenue growing at 4% per year don't tell you which is the better business. The margin is the signal. Verisign keeps 68 cents of every dollar it earns, while Amazon keeps 11 cents. The trade-off is valuation. These companies are not cheap. Verisign trades at roughly 27 to 28 times forward earnings, near the lower end of its historical range due to domain growth concerns. FICO trades at approximately 38 to 39 times. TPL commands a premium reflecting broad awareness of its royalty structure. The businesses that generate the highest margins sustainably tend to trade at the highest multiples because the market has learned what they are worth. None of them appear in any AI or technology ETF. Most retail investors who own NVIDIA and Microsoft do not own a single share of any of the 7 companies on this list. That is the gap this video was designed to close. So which of these 7 were already on your radar, and which one surprised you most? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for joining me today. If you found this video helpful, remember to subscribe to Trading Key, give this video a like, and share it with a friend who might just benefit from learning this too. With that, I'll see you in the next one.